Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for Star Trek Lower Decks Season 3, Episode 8, Crisis Point 2, Paradoxous. This video is part of a series of videos where I review episodes of Lower Decks. So I have to start with the spoiler warning for Lower Decks up to Season 3, Episode 8. If you have not seen up to this point, you will not want to watch this video, otherwise some things will be spoiled for you. So, this is a decent episode. I don't think it was as strong as Crisis Point 1, which I guess I'll have to call that now, which I still think is one of the best episodes of the show, where this one, I wouldn't really say was one of the best episodes of the show, but it's still good. It was a solid Lower Decks episode. It just doesn't stick out as much to me. There were some good, interesting character beats in this episode. I don't think it was quite as hilarious as Crisis Point 1, which is why I'm making that distinction. It didn't have as many, parodies or really jabs at the Star Trek films like the first one did. And this one's, I don't know, it seems to acknowledge more that it's a movie, but it was still a really fun episode. So it begins where we see, we have the Romulan triplets, which is kind of making fun of the Duras sisters, which I like. That's kind of funny. I think the Romulan ship to me looks like the ones that were in Nemesis. But anyway, they're, Romulan ship's about to destroy the Cerritos, and they steal this thing, and then the Wayfarer, which is Boimler's ship, I think he's Captain Dagger. It sounded to me like they were saying Decker, but I think they were saying Dagger. But anyway, he shows up, and so Boimler's made this new holodeck program. He made a sequel off of Mariner's Crisis Point, and she was kind of complaining about it. She was saying how the first one was, and I like how they reference it and talk about how she just used it to for therapy, and she killed all of her friends and crew, which is pretty fucked up, which is something I've heard someone really criticize that episode for, but that Boimler sort of turned it into his own sort of wishful thinking of being this badass great captain who's kind of a Kirk type, I would say, like the ladies' man, and who's very adventurous, and everyone looks to be like, oh, it's Captain Dagger, he's here to save the day, which is all very stereotypical. And had it played out that way, then that would have been a little boring. Hold on, let me let me grab my cat. So anywho, so yeah, there she is. Anyway, so that would have been boring if they just did it as very typical sort of how Boimler played out. But we see Boimler goes to an appointment with Commander Ransom. Sorry. And he comes back, and obviously something really happened. Obviously, he's really, depressed and really down, and it made me really curious why, what happened. But moreover, Mariner, is completely, oblivious to this and doesn't notice this, which I buy for several reasons. First of all, this is a comedy. It's funnier that way if she doesn't realize what's going on. Secondly, Mariner is a little self-absorbed. I think that is definitely part of her character, so I totally buy that she would not be able to tell that Boimler is definitely something that he was feeling fine, and then he had that meeting with Ransom, and all of a sudden he's definitely not in a good mood and feeling really down on himself. But I kind of glossed over one of my favorite jokes of the episode, where they're talking about the movie, and attendee, I think they call it the, I can't even remember the name of Mariner's villain character from first Crisis Point. They called that verse or whatever, and then they bring up, Tindy brings up, because they introduced the MacGuffin of the storyline of the Crisis Point 2 storyline, which is, I love this. It's time origami. Was it something like time origami because it folds time? I love it. It's so silly and ridiculous, and I like that it's in like this holiday program, so they acknowledge that it's stupid and ridiculous. It is kind of making fun of the MacGuffins, and not just Star Trek movies, but a lot of sci-fi movies. Anyway, they bring up how they could travel in this movie. They're gonna travel to any point in time, and so Tendy's like, "Oh, we're gonna have like an alternate timeline where they have where there's like different people, different versions of herself, different younger versions of herself played by different actors." Fuck the Kelvin movies. Anyway, I like that jab at it. No, I think it was Mariner that said that, and Tendy's like, no, that wouldn't make any sense. Indeed it wouldn't, indeed it wouldn't. But anyway. So they resume the program, and Boimler's like in a really bad mood, so he's not like wanting to do, like, they have this really hot chick who's kind of, they played off this whole like science lab scene like Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, and it's like a hotter version, I would say, of Carol Marcus. Probably more like the Into Darkness version of her, but the way they were dressed and the way that the lab looked more like The Wrath of Khan. And then they watched like that video that explains what the time origami thingy is, and it was very similar to the Genesis video from Wrath of Khan. I like how Rutherford's like, "Ooh, look at the cool graphics." And then Boimler's just not feeling it. He's not in a good mood, and he even rejects his love interest that he created, because he created this program. And Mariner's confused. It's like, what? This is the whole point of her. There's supposed to be a romantic subplot, and the character herself was even like, I don't know what to do. Now, some people had compared this to Boimler rejecting all the girls in the pilot episode who were at the raisin farm or whatever, and suggesting that perhaps he's asexual. I don't think he is at all. I really don't think that's what they're getting at. We can tell from the episode with his girlfriend from season 1, which I still hated the reveal of that episode, because Boimler, you know. And because the whole point of the episode is girls wouldn't be interested in Boimler, but then the season 3 premiere kind of undermines that whole premise. But anyway, regardless, I don't think he's asexual. I think it's here I think for the season 3 premiere he was just very dense. Some people refer to it as perhaps a type of autism where they're not able to sort of pick up nuances like that, but I think there's a lot of people like that who are just really dense and don't pick up on signs, and I think they just exaggerated for comedy's sake in that episode. And in this episode, it's more the fact that he's in a terrible mood. It's the fact that he's still reaming over the news that Ransom gave him. And because he had originally intended to do like a whole romantic thing with her, it's just if he was in a good mood, if the thing never happened, then he would have. But anyway, so then they go off to this planet, and this is where the plots kind of diverge a bit, where God, now my other cat wants to get it. Okay, hold on. So, anyway, now, there she is. Anyway, so, where was I? So, yeah, he's just, they go to this planet with the mercenaries, and this is where the plot diverges, because Boimler doesn't really give a shit about the movie anymore, and Mariner's starting to notice this, and that he's, like, going off. There's, like, all these religious people in the background who are meant to just be extras, not like how, like, Mariner, like, points this out and calls out, like, why are you interacting with these? They're just like side characters that the holodeck created. But it makes it very interesting, and to me, I like this. It really speaks to the interactive nature of the holodeck, that even though Boimler didn't create the side plot, they're sort of extrapolating, and because he chooses to interact with what were just side characters who were meant there to be like, to harass them and be like, ooh, find religion, find spiritual thing, whatever, they're just meant to be in the background. But because Boimler's interacting with them, the holodeck sort of can extrapolate and sort of build up this side plot. Now, it's not a very well thought out side plot, and as we see, it leads to something a bit ridiculous, and that's because it wasn't programmed in the holodeck, and the holodeck is kind of just filling in the gaps, which I like. I think that's really interesting. It makes the holodeck seem really awesome. But yeah, so Boimler gets preoccupied with finding the meaning of life, so he goes to these religious people, and I love, what's his name, Tic Tac, or Dick Tock, or God, what the hell is his name? I'm gonna have to look this up now. Hold on. Nick Nack, I think that's his name. Anyway, he's meant to just be like this background character, and I like how sort of Mariner is like, oh, this is just a weird alien background character, because it points out how in a lot of Star Trek shows and movies, they'll have like these weird aliens in the background just to, add flavor to the background or whatever, and that's all that knick-knack was supposed to be. But because Boimler kept choosing to interact with them, that he became sort of a major character. And then I like how the holodeck sort of made him this major character, and at the end he's the one that ended up breaking them out of prison, like, oh, in this prison cell, just now what are we gonna do to get out? And he shows up as like, Nick. And later, like, turns into this giant muscular beast like Nick Nack, and it was absolutely hilarious. Oh my god, I thought that was so funny. But anyway, in between that, Mariner kind of got sick of Boimler's, like, his fussing, and he's obviously in a terrible mood, so Mariner, left the holodeck, but then she went to go see Ransom, who gave her a positive report, but then told her about Boimler. And what he had told him was apparently that his transporter twin, William Boimler, who was serving on the Titan, died. This like a meaningless death in his sleep, and this is why Boimler is really upset and pondering the meaning of life and what sense this would make for someone to die such a senseless death. Which is really interesting, like, internal crisis. And then so then Mariner goes back to the holodeck, now understanding, because Ransom also said, like, I couldn't get through hard times without my friends, and this is again a great character moment for Mariner. It really portrays her as a really really good character who does want to go there and be for Boimler, because let's be fair, she kind of treats him like shit a lot, but more of in a jokey kind of friendly way. But here, when she sees that he's in crisis point, get it? But anyway, she sees that he's in crisis, and so goes there to be his friend, and goes with him, and she's like willing to follow him on this side quest that he's created in this movie. And and that's when they get broken out of the prison cell by Nick Nack. And they find the god creature or whatever that they were looking for. I think it was like Kitty Hawk or something like that. And he goes there, and it's just spouting out like random platitudes because, hey, this is a holodeck. And Mariner kind of points that out, and Boimler gets frustrated and thinks there must be a deeper meaning. So he goes, like, breaks inside of it and finds this like thing, satellite, where it's like dusted off and it says Kitty Hawk, but he dusts the whole thing off. And I can't even remember what it said, but it was something inconsequential. It was really making fun of the motion picture, the whole Voyager thing being Voyager 6, and how that doesn't really make a difference. And then Boimler's just like, what? That doesn't even make any sense. I like that. See, that was a nice jab at the movie. And of course, the whole like situation, the whole planet where they go to with this weird creature is very reminiscent of the god creature from Star Trek V. and the plot, really. But then Boimler sort of blacks out and has this vision of Sulu. And I like how there was a fake out because the mailbox said Kirk, so he was expecting to see Captain Kirk. And I was like, oh my god, did they get William Shatner to do the voice? But then they revealed it was Sulu and George Takei doing Sulu. I'm like, no, that's much better. I'd much rather hear George Takei than William Shatner. That's just me. Because George Takei is awesome and William Shatner, kind of an asshole. But anyway, neither here nor there. So then he talks to Sulu, who kind of does impart some wisdom to him, is saying, basically telling him that you find your own meaning with life through the relationships you have with your friends and your family, and rather than looking for anything existential or whatever. So that was really powerful. And then they left it kind of ambiguous to whether or not this was a hallucination or part of the holodeck program or near death experience, because Boimler said something, was I hallucinating when I was unconscious? And Dr. Tana was like, you were like dead. And she says it like in a nonchalant way, so they play it kind of for comedy. So it's hard to understand exactly, what they were going for. Was this a post-death experience or whatever? Was it just something in the holodeck, or was it a dream? We don't know, and they leave that ambiguous, which I think is pretty cool. So now let me circle back to the Tendi and Rutherford storyline, which I had gotten sick of them constantly breaking up the storylines and putting these two together, but they hadn't done it in a while, so I'll allow them this. And plus, I actually really like what they did to it. So they keep going on all these adventures through the time origami thing. There's this thing where there's like this sentient like octopus who creates who solves this issue of algae or whatever. I can't remember the year that they said. I have to go back. Maybe I watched an Easter eggs video will tell me exactly in the timeline where this happened. But apparently this was an event that could have wiped out like a lot of species, and it was solved by this like octopus creature. I guess again this is kind of poking fun at the whole Star Trek IV, the whales, because they then travel back to like the 80s to try to protect the octopus's ancestors. So again, it's very reminiscent of Star Trek IV. But through the whole time, what's his face? I want to say Boimler, not Boimler, Mariner. Rutherford, that's the one. Rutherford is not taking this seriously, and which is really pissing Tendi off, because they go to this place where all there's algae everywhere, and he just goes and grabs something to eat, and he is not taking this seriously at all, and is asking Tendi why she is. And then when they go back to the 80s, he's like, when they attack these punks, they're like, oh, come on, let's take off their clothes, and Tendi's like, we don't have time for that. He's like, but that's the best part of coming back to the 80s. And then the pants wouldn't fit him, because this is also a common trope in lots of films where they beat someone up and steal their clothes. But I like how this kind of points out the impracticality of it. What if it doesn't fit you? What if it's not the right size? And Rutherford's just like, we need to find some more punks to beat up. God, which is pretty funny. So anyway, they eventually go to the founding of the Federation. We see in the background the same sort of scenario we saw in the finale of Enterprise, which is not as bad as people think it is. It's fine. But anyway, we saw that, and I actually expected this. I expected like an Archer to show up. I thought we might get a Scott Bakula voiceover, and I'm still kind of disappointed we didn't. But at least have show Archer in the background, even if you can't get Bakula. But anyway, they're, because the Romulan triplets are trying to set off this bomb, and Tendi has to defuse it, and Rutherford is trying to defuse it, but he's totally not taking it seriously and just like humming a song, and this is really pissing Tendi off. And then the holodeck version of Dr. Jahana is killed protecting them, and Tendi's like starts crying and is like, no, and Rutherford's like, it smells like burnt meat. He's just really not taking it seriously, and this one Tendi finally explodes at him, and he's like, what, it's just a movie, why are you taking it so seriously? And she's like, because I want to be a captain. So you're saying you don't think I'd make a good captain? You don't take me seriously as a captain? And he's like, no, I would totally take you seriously as a captain. I would love you as a captain. And then so from then on out, he started taking it more seriously, and to support her. And to support her in her endeavors of she's basically trying to train and be like what it's like and see what it's like to be a captain. And once he realizes this, he supports her fully, and I love that. That was again like good character story telling, which really worked. And I like how they, at the end, they make this joke about how they hate cliffhangers. Like, I'm glad the movie didn't end on the cliffhangers. Cliffhangers are so dumb. And then, of course, we cut to the episode ending on a cliffhanger where we find out that William Boimler actually didn't die. He was just recruited into Section 31. And again, he kind of makes fun. And this is something people point out in Discovery, because this is what Discovery is the one that invented this, where Section 31's has black comm badges. He's like, well, if we're like, a rogue element, like, why do we have comm badges that advertise who we are? And they're just like, all right, well, you can actually be dead if you want. He's like, no, I'm good, I'll take the comm which is hilarious. And then he did this evil maniacal laugh, so they're making it clear that they're gonna turn William. I thought they might turn him into the evil twin character. It's trope not just in Star Trek, but a lot of fiction. I mean, but it would be perfect for Lower Decks to make fun of because of lore, and even Thomas. Obviously, this is more based off of Thomas Riker, but Thomas Riker didn't go outright evil, but he joined the Maquis. But they're definitely making this more of the cliche stereotype of the evil twin, which because it's a comedy and it's like making fun of it, I like it for that. I think this would be great. And that was funny how he ended on that maniacal laugh. So yeah, I think the more I talked about this episode, the more I realized that I actually did really like this episode. I maybe wouldn't say it's one of the best of the show, but I think it was one of the strongest of the season for sure. So my rating for Crisis Point 2 Paradoxia out of 10, I'm actually going to give this a 9. I started out this review thinking I'd give it an 8, but the more I thought about it, the more I think I'll give this a 9. Excellent. Maybe a weak 9. I'm not like a really strong one, but still, I think this was a very solid episode. It did have, actually, the more I thought about it, it had more funnier jokes than I had previously thought. The whole thing about Rutherford, like, not taking it seriously, wanting to dress up in clothes, and all that. They did have a few, maybe not as many jabs at the films, or not quite as funny as the first Crisis Point did, but they did have some jabs at, like, the whole V'ger thing and the God thing. I just wish they had Boimler say some line that made fun of, what does God need with the starship? Like, something like that would have been funny, but still, they made fun of the whole V'ger thing. It was like, well, what's the point of that? and you know, the side characters, the knick-knack, how they always have to have side characters in the background. God damn it, I love knick-knack. People talk about, like, so after Peanut Hamper reappeared last episode, people were talking about, what about Badgie? They need to bring back Badgie. No, I hated Badgie. I really hope they don't bring back Badgie. That's a character, like, I just thought was really dumb. Knick-Knack, on the other hand, he'd be a great character to bring back. If they ever go back in the holodeck again, we fucking need to see Knick-Knack again. Anyway, that is it for my review of Crisis Point 2 Paradoxia. I shall be back next week and every week thereafter to finish covering Star Trek Lower Decks. In the meantime, I also cover other shows on my channel, such as House of the Dragon, Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, and all things Star Trek, many more Star Trek, and many more videos on other shows as well. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that, and thanks a lot for watching.